This story explores mature emotional themes, including betrayal, tension, and boundary violations. It does not contain explicit content. Viewer discretion is advised. It started with a weekend visit, nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. Just family. That's what I kept telling myself. My husband, Daniel, had always been close with his cousin, Marcus. They'd grown up like brothers, shared bunk beds in the summers, fought like hell over video games, then hugged it out by nightfall. I'd heard all the stories, sat through their endless inside jokes, and genuinely liked Marcus. He was funny, charming in that laid-back way, and the kind of guy who could light up a room without trying. So when he asked if he could crash at our place for a few days while his apartment was being fumigated, I didn't blink. I said yes before Daniel even had a chance to speak. No big deal. Friday night, he showed up with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, a bottle of wine in hand, and that same easy grin he always wore. I was tired from work but offered a smile, took the wine, and helped him get settled in the guest room. Everything felt normal until it didn't. Daniel had to leave early Saturday morning for a work emergency. One of his clients had a meltdown, and he'd be gone overnight. He kissed me goodbye, promised to call, and just like that, I was home alone. With Marcus. It wasn't awkward at first. We had breakfast together, eggs, toast, coffee, and chatted about nothing. The kind of background noise conversations you have when you're just passing time. He asked about work, I asked about his girlfriend, and we even started binging a crime series we both liked. Around 4 p.m., I told him I was heading to my room for a nap. I needed a mental break, and being polite had started to feel like work. He nodded, said he might take a walk. I didn't think twice. But when I woke up an hour later, the house was silent. Too silent. I got up, pulled on a hoodie, and stepped out into the hallway, only to realize my bedroom door wouldn't open. I jiggled the handle. Nothing. Locked. From the outside. My heart gave one hard thud. Marcus? I called out, half laughing, assuming it was some weird joke. No answer. I tried again, louder. Hey, what's going on? Why is the door locked? Still nothing. I pressed my ear to the door and listened. A soft creak. Then footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming closer. Marcus, I said again, voice tighter now. Open the door. He did. But nothing about his face looked like a joke. There was this shift in his expression, something unreadable. Calculated. I took a step back on instinct, suddenly unsure of everything. What he said next shocked me. Not because of how loud it was, but because of the calm in his voice. Like he'd been thinking about it for a while. And that's when I realized I had no idea who I had let into my house. Marcus didn't say anything right away. He just stood there, hands still on the doorknob, eyes scanning my face like he was waiting for a reaction I hadn't figured out how to give. I folded my arms, not out of confidence, but to stop my hands from shaking. Why'd you lock the door? He tilted his head slightly, like the question itself surprised him. I didn't want you to leave. The room felt suddenly smaller. Tighter. My chest did that shallow breath thing it does when something isn't right, but I don't have the words for it yet. That's not funny, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Seriously. I'm not joking. There was a stillness in him, like he'd hit pause on whatever version of himself I thought I knew. This wasn't the Marcus who made dumb jokes about bad coffee or argued with Daniel about old basketball stats. This was someone else. Someone quieter, calculating. And suddenly, I started replaying all the things I'd brushed off before. The way he watched me when he thought I wasn't looking. The weird pauses in conversation. The one time he walked into the bathroom without knocking and just laughed it off. I'd ignored all of it. "I think you should leave the room," I said. His eyes didn't move. "You ever wonder why Daniel doesn't talk about me much anymore?" I blinked, thrown. "What?" "We used to be close, like brothers, right?" "That's what you said." He smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. "But there's a reason he never brings up the last time I stayed with him. The stuff he doesn't tell you." The room went quiet except for the low hum of the ceiling fan. My instincts screamed at me to shut the door, to put something between us, but I didn't want to escalate anything. Not yet. Not until I understood what the hell was happening. "What happened, Marcus?" He looked down for a second, like he was measuring how much to reveal. When he looked back up, something in his face softened. "I'm not the villain here. I noticed things. The way you look at me sometimes. Like you're wondering what it would be like if things were different." I stared at him. "That's not true. Isn't it?" His tone wasn't angry. It was worse, it was confident. Like he truly believed what he was saying. I stepped forward, slowly. "Listen. You're crossing a line. Whatever story you've told yourself, it's not real." He didn't move. "Then tell me you've never thought about it." "About me?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Because here's the thing I didn't want to admit, not even to myself, I had noticed Marcus. Not in any active, intentional way. But in passing. In quiet, guilty glances when Daniel was distracted. That sharp sting of attraction I buried under jokes and small talk. I never fed it, never encouraged it, but I hadn't erased it either. And now, Marcus was standing in that crack of space I never meant to leave open. "I'm married to your cousin," I said finally, pushing the words out. "And you need to leave this room." His jaw tensed. For a second, I thought he might refuse. But then he gave a slow nod, stepped back, and shut the door gently behind him. Click. He locked it again. I stood there staring at the locked door, pulse pounding in my ears. No footsteps this time. No sound of him walking away. Just the sharp, final click of the lock and silence thick enough to choke on. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. No signal. Wi-Fi was off. I tried it again. Nothing. My breath caught. I didn't want to panic, not yet. I told myself maybe it was a glitch, maybe I was overreacting. But deep down, I already knew. Something had shifted. Marcus wasn't just crossing boundaries anymore. He was planning something. I sat on the edge of the bed and ran my fingers through my hair, trying to think. I couldn't call Daniel. Couldn't leave the room. And worst of all, I couldn't tell if Marcus was standing just outside the door, listening. The weirdest part? A small, shameful part of me wasn't scared. Not in the traditional sense. I was angry. At myself. At Marcus. At the quiet lie I'd been living. Because the truth was, things hadn't been perfect between Daniel and me for a long time. We still laughed, still shared space like partners, but something emotional had gone flat. He traveled more, checked out more, barely noticed when I was gone for hours. We weren't broken, but we were drifting. And I hadn't stopped it. Now Marcus was here, cracking that distance wide open. Then, something hit me. What if Daniel already knew? What if this whole thing was some twisted test? Maybe that was why Marcus brought up things Daniel doesn't tell you. My mind raced, flipping through memories. Daniel had gotten weird when I mentioned Marcus staying with us. He brushed it off, but there was a flash in his eyes, something he swallowed before I could name it. Was this a setup? Or a warning? The sound of the front door opening downstairs cut through my thoughts. I froze. Heavy footsteps. Not Marcus's slow, deliberate ones, these were quicker, firmer. Then his voice, Daniel. Mara, he called. I bolted for the door. Up here. I'm locked in. A beat of silence. Then Daniel's voice again, closer now, sharper. Marcus. No answer. The lock jiggled. I stepped back. Daniel shoved the door open. The look on his face wasn't just concern, it was fury. Are you okay? He asked, pulling me into a tight, instinctive hug. I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. He locked me in. Daniel stepped back. He cut the Wi-Fi. Turned off your phone's access from the router. What? My stomach flipped. I just saw it. And his car's gone. You think he left? I think he's buying time. Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked like a man trying not to lose it completely. He pulled out his phone and started dialing. I should have told you. There's a reason I don't talk about Marcus anymore. What reason? He paused. Last time he stayed with me, there was a girl. A neighbor. She ended up moving out after he made her uncomfortable. I didn't have proof, but I knew something wasn't right. I just didn't want to believe he could do that. I stared at him, shocked. Why the hell didn't you tell me before letting him stay here? Because I didn't think he'd try anything with you, Daniel said, eyes clouded with guilt. I didn't think he'd. We both heard it then. The faint creak of the back door. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. He's still here. Daniel motioned for me to stay behind him as he crept down the hallway. His phone was still in his hand, but he hadn't made the call. I knew why. He didn't want to alert Marcus if he was still inside. The house was too quiet. That thick, unnatural kind of silence where every creak of the floorboard sounds like a scream. We reached the kitchen. The back door was open, just an inch. A breeze moved the curtain, slow and taunting. No sign of Marcus. Daniel turned to me. Stay here. No, he gave me a look. I'm not staying in a room again, I said. Not alone. His jaw clenched, but he nodded. We stepped outside together, careful. The backyard stretched into a narrow alley, fences on both sides. Nothing moved. But then we heard it, metal clinking. From the garage. Daniel held up a hand and moved ahead. I followed, breath tight in my throat. My legs felt heavy, like they were trying to warn me to stop. But I couldn't, not now. He opened the garage door fast. Empty. Almost. Marcus was standing inside, near the workbench. He wasn't holding a weapon, but something about the way his hands were placed, firm on the table like he was steadying himself, made my stomach drop. He looked at us calmly. No panic, no fear. Just that same cold stillness he'd shown in the hallway hours ago. Daniel stepped forward. What the hell are you doing? Marcus gave a faint smile. Cleaning up. Don't play games with me, Daniel snapped. You locked my wife in a room. You cut the Wi-Fi. You turned off her access to call for help. Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah. I needed time. For what? To make her see what's really going on. Daniel's fists tightened. You're sick. No, Marcus said, finally looking at me. I'm just the only one who's being honest. That's when the fear kicked in again, because I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Not desire. Not aggression. Certainty. Like he genuinely believed he was right. Like he'd convinced himself that whatever he was doing wasn't just acceptable, it was necessary. Daniel stepped between us. You need to leave. Right now. Marcus's voice dropped low. You don't get to tell me what to do anymore. You lost that right when you abandoned me. What the hell are you talking about? You left me behind, Marcus said, eyes burning now. After everything. After Mom died, after everything fell apart, you cut me off like I was some obligation. You moved on. Got a new life, a perfect wife, and you didn't even look back. Daniel was silent for a beat. I tried to help you. But you scared people. You scared me. I didn't know how to fix that. You didn't try hard enough. The words landed like a punch. There it was. The root of it all. Marcus wasn't just obsessed. He was broken. Rejected. And somehow, in his twisted logic, I had become part of the life he thought he should have had. I'm calling the police, Daniel said, lifting his phone. Marcus didn't flinch. Do what you have to. But don't pretend I'm the only one who crossed a line. He looked right at me then. Not angry. Just empty. And for a moment, I wondered if we were too late. If this wasn't about an attraction or a mistake, but something much darker unraveling right in front of us. Then Marcus turned, slowly, calmly, and walked out the garage's side door into the alley. And vanished. We didn't chase after Marcus. We just stood there in the garage, rattled and wired, like we'd survived a storm that wasn't finished yet. Daniel finally broke the silence. We need to call the police. I nodded, still staring at the door Marcus disappeared through. What if he comes back? He won't. Not tonight. But we were wrong. Because 20 minutes later, as two officers walked around the property taking our statements, something in Daniel's expression shifted. Not panic, confusion. He glanced at me, then at the officers, then back at me again. What's wrong? I asked. He lowered his voice. They ran his name. Marcus never checked in to the extermination service. There's no record of an apartment being fumigated. I blinked. So, what does that mean? He swallowed hard. It means he's been lying from the beginning. About why he came here. About where he's even living. That's when the officer came back. We traced his car registration. The address it's tied to, it's your name. I froze. What? Daniel stepped closer to the officer. That's not possible. That car's his. Registration was updated last month. Your name, Mara. Not his. My mouth went dry. I didn't do that. I never signed anything for him. The officer gave me a cautious look. Then someone forged it. Or had access to your personal info. Daniel turned to me slowly. What else has he touched? I ran to my laptop. Pulled up my emails. Checked banking alerts. I didn't want to believe it, but the signs were there, subtle logins, password resets I never noticed, location pings from my work address when I wasn't even in the office. Marcus hadn't just crossed a line. He'd been inside my life. Quietly. Patiently. 4 months. The laptop screen blinked, then froze. A message flashed across the screen, just 3 words, "You see now." I slammed it shut. Daniel's voice was tight. "He's been watching you. Following your routine. Setting this up." "But why?" I whispered. And that's when I remembered something, a photo from weeks ago. Marcus at the beach. I hadn't thought much of it at the time, but he'd tagged it with a caption that suddenly meant something very different now. Everything in place. Daniel leaned in, connecting the dots. He didn't come here to test your loyalty. He came to replace me. The idea felt too insane to say out loud. But the more I sat with it, the clearer it became. Marcus didn't want to seduce me. He wanted to be Daniel. He studied him. Mimicked his speech, his clothes, his mannerisms. And when Daniel wasn't around, he stepped into the space like it was already his. That wasn't attraction. That was obsession rooted in identity. He wasn't just spiraling. He was rebuilding his life using pieces of ours. I sat down, numb. We've been living with someone who was planning this the whole time. Daniel looked at me. This isn't over. He's not finished. The officer stepped in again. We'll issue an alert, start tracking his phone. But if he's been this calculated, it's possible he's already off the grid. And then, another message. This time on my phone. No name. No number. Just, "We didn't sleep that night." Daniel sat near the front window, arms crossed, staring out like he expected Marcus to reappear at any second. I paced, back and forth, watching the shadows shift on the walls every time headlights passed. By morning, there was still no word. No activity on his phone. No sightings. It was like he'd vanished, again. But we both knew better. Marcus wasn't done. He hadn't spent months planning only to ghost us. He was waiting for something. For the right moment. I checked my phone for the 100th time, scrolling past the last message. You should have picked me. There was something so final about it. Like a goodbye. Or a threat. Around 9 a.m., Daniel's phone buzzed. Unknown number. A voicemail. He played it on speaker. It was Marcus. His voice was calm. Measured. I'm not running. I just needed you both to hear it this way. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted to belong again. To feel seen. I thought maybe, if she saw me, really saw me, it would be enough. He paused. But I see now I was always just a shadow to you, Daniel. To both of you. Another pause. You don't need to look for me. I'm done. The line went dead. I looked at Daniel. What does that mean? Before he could answer, we heard it, tires on gravel. We rushed outside. A black sedan, unfamiliar, parked across the street. The driver stepped out. Not Marcus. A woman. Late 30s. Sharp eyes. Professional. She walked straight to us. Are you Mara and Daniel? Daniel stepped forward. Who's asking? She reached into her jacket and pulled out a badge. I'm Agent Lynn. I've been tracking Marcus for almost a year. I stared at her. Tracking him for what? She didn't blink. Online identity theft. Psychological manipulation. In 2 other states, he embedded himself into families, claimed to be a cousin, a childhood friend. Built trust. Then dismantled everything. My stomach dropped. Why? Because he's not really your cousin, she said flatly. Marcus doesn't exist. Daniel stepped back like she'd slapped him. That's not possible. I know it's hard to hear. But the man you've known as Marcus used at least 3 aliases over the past 10 years. Daniel, whoever he was to you, it was a role. He builds lives around people, and then erases himself when it falls apart. I couldn't breathe. Daniel looked like he couldn't either. He had photos, I whispered. Memories. Stories. He studies his targets for months before contact. Enough to fake intimacy, history, even grief. Daniel shook his head slowly. But we grew up together. No, Agent Lin said. You grew up near a boy named Marcus. But the man who was in your house. That wasn't him. That was someone else using that name. We stood there in stunned silence. All this time, we thought the danger was about obsession. Jealousy. Betrayal. But it was deeper than that. We didn't just let the wrong man into our home. We never even knew who he was. Agent Lin looked at us. We'll find him. He always leaves a trail eventually. She handed us her card and walked away. Daniel turned to me. So, where does that leave us? I looked at the house. The silence. The space between us. I don't know, I said honestly. But for the first time, I think we need to figure that out. Without ghosts. Without shadows. He nodded, eyes heavy. Together? I hesitated. Then nodded back. Together. But just as we stepped back inside, my phone buzzed again. One final message. You always see the shadow last. 3 months later, things are quieter. The investigation confirmed it. Marcus, or whatever his real name was, had been moving from state to state for years, slipping into people's lives like a ghost. He'd stolen identities, manipulated trust, and vanished just before things broke apart. We weren't the first, and we probably won't be the last. But we were lucky. He didn't destroy us. If anything, he forced us to face the distance that had been growing between us for years. Daniel and I didn't have a perfect marriage, and maybe we never did, but what we have now is honest. We talk more. We listen more. There's no pretending anymore. I still check the locks at night. Still jump when an unknown number calls. But I also know we survived something most people wouldn't believe. The real danger wasn't just that someone was watching us. It was that we didn't know ourselves well enough to see it. Now we do. And if there's one thing this whole experience taught me, it's this: evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes, it wears a smile and knows your favorite coffee order. Trust your gut. Pay attention to the silences. And never ignore what feels off, because you're probably right. Thanks for sticking with me through this wild, twisted journey.